Welcome to the Armchair Travel Program, Sailing in the Bahamas. Thank you for joining us. We hope to interest you in pirates, sailing, and the islands off our Florida coast. My name is Mike, and I've sailed these islands many times. I'll be your captain during this 4-episode voyage. The Bahamas is a coral-based archipelago consisting of about 700 islands and more than 2,000 keys. An island, by the way, is land on rock. The key is low-elevation sandy buildup on a dead coral reef. The population of the Bahamas, about 385,000, but only around 30 of the islands are inhabited. That leaves 2,670 islands and cays empty of human inhabitants. What are the boundaries of the Bahamas? USA, Cuba, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the Turks and Caicos, and the Atlantic Ocean. Interestingly, the Bahamas are actually longer than Florida. On a historical note, the first place Christopher Columbus landed when he came to the New World in 1492 was in the Bahamas. He named it San Salvador. The natives called that island Guanahani at the time, but today nobody actually knows which island or key he landed on. This chart is only the northern part of the Bahama Island chain. The circled areas are the places we'll travel to. Miami, our departure point, Alistown on Bimini Island, Marsh Harbor way up on Great Abaco, Spanish Wells and Governor's Harbor down on Eleuthera, and Nassau on New Providence Island. I do have a disclaimer. The photos and information in this program were taken before September 1st, 2019, when Dorian slammed into the Abaco and Grand Bahama Islands. These are the most northern islands of the Bahamas. Here you can see the track of that hurricane. Most of the towns and settlements devastated has still not fully recovered. Today's program will follow this itinerary. Planning, provisioning, Pirates Republic, sailing to Bimini, Bahamian customs and immigration, Alistown, the Sapona shipwreck and Gun Key, Bahamian myths and legends, Marsh Harbor on Great Abaco, and Hopetown on Elbow Key, Spanish Wells on Eleuthera, Governor's Harbor on Eleuthera, including French Leave Resort, and flying home. You must plan your voyage carefully. There are no signposts out there or places to pull over and ask for help. How do you know if you're even heading in the right direction? There's no point of reference, just water everywhere. You better have a plan, and that is a course plotted on nautical charts and a GPS receiver. GPS refers to the United States Military Satellite Navigation System. A GPS receiver is an instrument available to the public to use to tap into this satellite system. And you need to take GPS readings while traveling and note them on your charts to see if you're on track. In the left photo, we're checking our charts and plotting with pencils and rulers right on our charts. On the right photo, we're noting our GPS positions on the charts while sailing. The islands are far between, and everything there, including food, is expensive. The inhabitants need to bring in almost everything from someplace else, so your trip provisioning is very important. How many days? How many people? How many meals? This is one of the actual lists I used for a multi-day sail. It doesn't include the days the plan was to eat on an island restaurant. Interesting, isn't it? These sloops will be our transports. They draft about 4.5 feet, so we'll need to be careful to not run aground. Some terms? A sloop is a sailboat with only one mast. Draft refers to how deep into the water the underside or keel of a boat goes. Last minute relaxing before we begin. Note the extra drinking water, blue cans on deck, and extra gasoline, red cans on deck. You can't see them, but extra diesel fuel is in yellow cans, also on deck. Using the proper color container for the proper liquid is critical and standardized in the sailing community. See the yellow ribbon-like line on deck? That's to tie yourself to while you're walking on deck so you don't fall overboard. Can you imagine trying to rescue someone overboard out in the ocean? On our 29-foot sloop, it takes around 10 hours sailing to get from Biscayne Bay to the closest Bahamian island, which is Bimini. So you depart at dusk to arrive at sunup to take advantage of daylight navigation. In general, the Bahamas waterways aren't marked as well as those here in the U.S., so you need to see where you are and see the sea bottom to avoid reefs and sandbars. You and your crew work in shifts at night to keep awake and alert, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, sleeping. Work includes steering, watching for other boats, changing sail positions depending on the weather and wind direction, noting your GPS position on your charts. But there is something that you no longer need to worry about while sailing in the Bahamas. The Bahamas at one time had the greatest concentration of pirates of any Caribbean country. That was between 1690 and 1725. Its location put it next to busy shipping lanes, while the surrounding waters were too shallow for the heavier British Navy man-of-war ships. NASA became known as the Pirates' Republic. At that time, there were about 100 locals in the port town and roughly 1,000 pirates. Look at all the islands for the pirates to hide in. Note the shipping lanes determined by prevailing winds and ocean currents. What was prized pirate plunder? Well, certainly South and Central American gold and silver headed to Spain. Medicine was a highly prized item. Fishing ships were also plundered, and the nets and tackle were taken, as well as the fish. The most popular goods in the 1700s were bolts of cloth, dyes and spices, sugar, cotton, tobacco, wood, and tanned animal skins. Benjamin Hornigold was an early pirate. He once attacked a merchant ship only to steal the crew's hats. He turned to piracy after England stopped paying privateers to harass Spanish ships in the Americas. In his final years, the once powerful and feared Hornigold became a pirate hunter. Although he sailed the Bahamas for 18 months, he never managed to catch any of his former allies. Hornigold, as with all pirates, had his own flag, the skull and crossbones. Look familiar? Probably. He is most famous for discovering a young pirate named Edward Teach and made him his second in command. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was a legendary pirate who worked the Caribbean, the coast of Mexico, and eastern North America. His pirating career lasted 5 years, and it's estimated that in that time he captured around 40 ships. Blackbeard is just as well known today as he was during his heyday 300 years ago. He's arguably the most famous pirate ever to set sail. But many of the things attributed to him did not really happen. Blackbeard hid buried treasure somewhere. Sorry, this legend persists anywhere Blackbeard ever spent time, such as North Carolina or New Providence. In reality, pirates rarely, if ever, buried treasure. Blackbeard would light his hair on fire before a battle. Well, sort of true. Blackbeard wore his black beard and hair very long, but he never actually lit them on fire. He would put little candles or pieces of a fuse in his hair and light those. They would give off smoke, giving the pirate a fearsome demonic appearance. In battle, this intimidation worked. His foes were terrified of him. In mid-1718, Blackbeard intentionally ran his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, onto a sandbar, effectively destroying it. He then went with some 20 of his men to see the governor of North Carolina and accepted a pardon. For a while, Blackbeard lived there as an average citizen. But it didn't take him long to take up piracy again. This time, he went into cahoots with the governor, sharing the loot in exchange for protection. He did finally drop dead during a battle, after sustaining 5 gunshot wounds and 20 sword cuts. Calico Jack. He was not regarded as the great fighter or fierce naval tactician, but his cunning mind and tendency to use backstabbing and politics to further his goals made him one of the most unique pirates on the seas of the Caribbean. An important impact that Calico Jack had on the modern image of pirates is his Jolly Roger's flag. It has become the iconic pirate flag that today represents to everyone naval piracy. Anne Bonny and Mary Read were two women who became famous for their pirating adventures. Both joined Calico Jack's crew by dressing up and pretending to be men. They were known for their short tempers and were said to have been just as fierce as the men who fought beside them. In 1720, Calico Jack's ship was discovered by pirate hunters off the coast of Port Royal, Jamaica. During the ensuing battle, the men cowered in the hold under the ship, while Mary Read and Anne Bonny fought fiercely on deck. Eventually, they were overpowered, resulting in Jack surrendering his ship. But that wasn't the end of Bonny and Read. While the men rotted in prison and awaited their sentences, the two women told the privateers they were with child, known as pleading the belly. During this time, they managed to visit Jack in prison and said the most famous words in pirate history. "I'm sorry to see you here," Anne said, "but if you had fought like a man, you need not be hanged like a dog." In response to this plague of pirating, King George I of Great Britain issued the Proclamation for Suppressing of Pirates. The British Crown was willing to grant clemency to any pirate who surrendered themselves to a governor of the colonies by September 5, 1718. Hundreds of pirates who believed they would be criminals and fugitives until they died were suddenly free to return to society. The offer was simply too good for many to pass up. The proclamation offered a reward of £20 to £100, that's $4,000 to $20,000, for the capture or assistance in the capture of any pirate who continued pirating. As an added incentive, pirates themselves were offered £200 to turn in their captains. That's over $40,000 in today's money. This ended piracy in the Caribbean.